Hi, Hunter with True Homes Photography here, and today we're going to talk about the camera settings you need to use when you're doing real estate photography. Alright, so to start off, I'm just going to talk about what I use, and this is all my preference. I use this Nikon D750, a really great camera. I've been using it for a while and I really like it. I'm really glad I made the decision to upgrade to a full frame camera. Before that I was using a crop sensor, which there's nothing against a crop sensor for real estate photography. I think the Nikon D7100 was a great tool for real estate photography. It's pretty good in low light. I just decided to go to full frame, and there's pros and cons to both. But you don't have to start out with a really expensive camera. You can start off on a crop sensor and work your way up. On this camera, I'm using a Nikon 14 to 24 millimeter f2.8, and this lens is pretty expensive. I do like it. Sometimes I do wish I could go to a further focal length than 24 millimeters. They do sell a Nikon 16 to 35 f4, which would be really nice because I really don't even shoot beyond 16 millimeters. I keep it around 16 or 17. I don't go to 14 millimeters normally. And then you'd also be able to go beyond 24. So that's probably a better lens for real estate photography than what I'm using. But this is just what I bought when I bought the camera. As far as f-stop goes, you don't need to go to f2, 2.8. I mean, for real estate photography, you're usually taking wide shots. And, you want to... The rule for real estate photography would be to keep your f-stop between 7 and 11. I shoot on 10. Just with this lens, I found that it was able to keep the edges nice and crisp. And, so I shoot on f10. Some of the people that work with me, they shoot on f8. Just depends on the lens that they're using and their preference on shooting. And, the higher up your f-stop, the longer your shutter speed will have to be. So, that just depends on how you want to shoot. I shoot everything on aperture priority. It's a little bit easier than shooting on manual. And I just set the aperture I want to shoot at. It automatically chooses the shutter speed to get the shot. And then I leave my ISO at around 200 to 400. Sometimes I've gone up to 600 if it was really dark and I didn't want like a 20-second shutter speed. But aperture priority is definitely the way to go. And I always shoot raw. You always want to shoot raw. If you shoot a JPEG, there's pretty much, you can't do anything to a JPEG other than just some exposure, but they're not that flexible. When you shoot with a raw file, you're going to get, you can adjust the color temperature, you can adjust the exposure. This camera right here has really good dynamic range. I can usually save a picture up to 2 stops without any noise. And, that's really good flexibility to have. At True Homes Photography, we shoot everything HDR. We do offer some flash photography as well for an additional charge, but everything is pretty much HDR that we do every day. I always do 3 exposures. If you don't know what HDR is, it's taking multiple exposures and blending them together. So when I take 3 exposures, I do 2 or 3 stops. Mostly I'll just, if it's a pretty well lit house, I'll do 2 stops. So you get, you'll start off with 2 stops below normal, then you have 1 at 0, normally exposed, and then 2 stops overexposed. And when you blend those all together, you'll get good highlights, good shadows, and nothing will be too over the top in your shot. It'll be pretty balanced. Sometimes when there's a lot of light to work with, I go up to 5 exposures. But it's up to you. It's all based on your preference and how you want to shoot. To process those HDR photos, there's a lot of software out there on the market. We have our preference here, but there's quite a few out there and they're pretty affordable. They do have a learning curve for each one, but develop your own presets, and that's the best way to work. And I believe Lightroom even has its own HDR setting where it will actually create a raw HDR file, and that's good to work with. That's not what we do here, but whatever suits you. Yeah, so I guess just if you have any questions, just let us know in the comments below. We'll get to those and we'll answer any questions that you have. Love to hear some feedback, and anyone else's ideas on how to improve HDR photography, or how I'd like to know how you shoot your HDR photography. Thanks for watching.